Hello there and welcome to a very special Bobeats video, because today we are among the first in the world to get to check out a new synth from ASM, the follow-up to the very successful and much beloved HydraSynth. So let's get right into it with an unboxing and some sound demos, and then we'll make some patches from scratch, and it's gonna be a good day. It's really well packaged, which is nice to see. So here we have it. And as you can see, it has a similar look to the HydraSynth, but it's a totally new synth. Digital analog hybrid, digital voices, analog filters. And a big thank you to ASM for sending over a review unit so I could make a video for you all. And this video was sponsored by Unz. It's the synth store you go to for indie synthesizers, the stuff that you won't find in regular stores. And they're definitely worth checking out, so use my link in the description. So in true synth lover fashion, I have not yet read the manual. I'm just gonna dive straight in, exploring some of the sounds. And something I immediately notice here with the sound is that it's way smoother sounding than, say, the HydraSynth. The HydraSynth doesn't sound bad by any means, but it does have this kind of digital tone to it, whereas this has a much smoother, more elegant tone, I think more analog sounding, which I think a lot of people will enjoy. But there's also a totally different sound engine here based on algorithms, and we'll dive into that shortly. That's quite beautiful. And just like the HydraSynth Deluxe, the synth is two-part, meaning that you can have two synth sounds playing at once, either split them or layer them, and you just switch here from single to multi. And you can also see on the screen here, we have the lower patches and the upper patches. For example, on this patch, we have a pad sound and a lead sound. And let's not forget the sip of the coffee. So what is the LEVIASYNth? Well, first and foremost, it's a 16-voice digital synthesizer with an analog filter and a digital filter. Very importantly, the analog filter has pre-drive, which lets you drive the signal into the filter, and that really does something with the sound. almost forgot to mention, there is also a module version. And from what I've heard from reputable sources, the module version is actually very nice to sound design on, and it should also be VESA mountable. And yes, there are rack ears, just like with the HydraSynth. So let's see here. Oh, way tinier than I thought it would be. That's nice, because the keyboard is huge. Oh, this looks good. And I do believe that the I/O is the same on the keyboard and the module. So we have just normal left, right, phones, sustain pedal, expression pedal, MIDI, in, out, through, power. There's nothing fancy going on there. There's no multiple outputs. So as you can see on the module, everything is way more tightly packed together. We have basically all of the important sound design controls over here. We have the layout for the entire synth over here. And yeah, this looks nice. And on the back, we have VESA mounts here, which is cool, and you can rack mount it. So yeah, I'm definitely gonna use this a lot for a small synth setup. And where I think that the analog filter with the pre-drive really shines is when you have a very digital sounding sound like this, for example. A sound like this could easily feel kind of cold and sterile, but the combination of digital, analog filter with the drive kind of warms it up. And then we have the digital filter, very similar to the one on the HydraSynth. And just like the HydraSynth, you have these buttons here that lets you move between different parts of the synth. For example, the filters, the VCA, the effects, the LFOs, and the envelopes up here. So you can press here, go to the filter, and here we can use these knobs here, or you can see here we can set different types of filters. Some of the filters have digital drive, and some of the filters are morphable. And morph basically means that we can create filters that look something like this. And as you can see, the screen quite snappy, the refresh rate quite snappy. Then over on this side, we have the master volume. You have balance here for the multi, so you can switch between single and multi. Single, just one sound at a time. We have 16 voices. Switch to multi, and you get 2 sounds, 8 voices each. Also, very important note is that there's a stereo mode hidden here under the voice menu, which basically stereo pans the voices. If you use it, you cut the voices in half, but you get a much bigger sound. Here's a sound that I made that is in stereo mode, but there's also panning going on, so. And if I turn stereo off, still pretty cool, and you get some stereo width from the reverb, which is over here. But the stereo mode is awesome, even if it cuts the voices in half. We also have an arpeggiator over here. There's also a 2-track sequencer with an additional track for parameter automations. Another really cool thing, and something I haven't seen on many synths before, is if we press the VCA here, we get a very clear graphical representation of the level of the sound in its different stages, making gain staging of your patch much easier. So if you have something more bombastic, you can rein it in very easily. And that's important because this synthesizer has 8 oscillators. The 8 oscillators are very special. Not only do you have a lot of different waveforms to choose from, but each oscillator also has its own envelope. Now this is something that you often find on, say, an FM synth, but this is not just an FM synth. This is far beyond that, and I'll dive even deeper into this later in the video because there's so much to say about it. But let me just say one thing clearly. This is a much deeper synth than the HydraSynth. It is far more complex, but it's not difficult to use. Since we're talking about oscillators, I need to mention oscillator modes, because this is where a lot of the confusion will come in, and some of them can be used to create sounds that are associated with FM synthesis. But then there's other modes that let you make totally different kinds of sounds, and we're gonna explore this more in the next chapter of the video, but here's just a little sneak peek. So here we have one oscillator, and it is being pulse width modulated by oscillator 6 here. And we also have an LFO here connected to control the level of this oscillator here that is pulse width modulating this oscillator here. Or you could set a modulator to sync and get a very classic sync sound. And the important thing to keep in mind is that because we're using algorithms, this can become super complex, because we could have one oscillator be modulated by another oscillator, creating a sync sound, but you could then take another modulator and modulate the modulator that's modulating the oscillator, and this can become super complex. And because we have so many oscillators, there's also these group edit buttons, which I think are brilliant. So if I press wave here, for example, I get a clear representation of the waveform of each of the oscillators. So here's a sound that I made. So if we go to wave, I can very quickly change the character of the sound by changing the waveforms. Or we could go to the envelope control here, and here you see a representation. Looks kind of messy, but it's a representation of all of the envelopes here for the oscillators. So it's just a very quick way to get a kind of top-down view of your entire patch and change things up quickly. There's also one other really interesting and pretty unique thing, and that is that we can press algo here and switch from a single algorithm. We can switch to a custom algorithm, but that's not super unique. You can do that on the Op6, for example. But there is a morph mode where we can very quickly add algorithms like so. You see how quick and easy it is? And we can now morph between the different algorithms. And sometimes you get really crazy results. But you can hear how smooth it is. And the really cool thing that you can do with algomorph is that you can modulate it so that the change between the different algos happens over time using, say, an envelope or an LFO, for example. So here's the sound without any algomorph going on. And let's introduce it. In terms of effects, you can have a pre-effect. So there are different chorus, flanger, rotary, phaser. You know the drill by now. Lo-fi effects, tremolo, compressor. They sound okay. And then you have a delay, different variations of delays, reverbs. There's like this big cloud reverb, and then post-effect, which is similar to the pre-effect. Basically the same. 8 knobs that you see here are either used when you are in different screens to change stuff, like so, or they can be used if we are in the overview of the patch for macro controls. Now on these patches I have not set up any macros, these are my patches, but if I go here, you can see here that we have octave, darken, chorus, flanger, and so on. These are macro controls. Basically you're controlling multiple parameters using one knob. We have a poly aftertouch keybed. It does feel a little bit better than the one on the HydraSynth. Then there's the ribbon control over here. It's not something that I personally use a lot, but you can use it to control pitch, for example, or use it for playing like a theremin style sound and a few other things. There's also a mod matrix here, and it's very standard. You set a source and a destination and a level. Pretty straightforward. There are 32 different slots here, very easy to use. You can also hold down something because, for example, here we have 5 LFOs, we have 5 envelopes, and because the oscillators here have their individual envelopes, sometimes, you know, you have quite a few here that are freed up to do other things. So you can just hold something down, say the LFO here, you want to change something on the oscillator 6, you press oscillator 6, you get it in the menu, and then you can just change what it is on oscillator 6 that you want to modulate. Very straightforward. Oh, and very importantly, this thing here is built like a tank. It's metal, it's very heavy, you can kill a zombie with it, and yeah, it's very well made. Got nice little LED lights here around the knobs. Overall, it feels very premium, feels very good to the touch. And lastly, in the overview, the synth is based on algorithms, and you can create your own custom algorithms as well. But more about that later in the video. This is the one YouTube ad you don't want to skip. Unz Unz is a synth and music gear store that focuses on gear from small manufacturers, the synths that you won't find in the big stores. Say you need a patch bay for your studio, well, they have the DF Audio Mini Bay, which is simply fantastic. Or why not the DFAM's little brother, the Metal Fetishist, or the newly released Drop synthesizer, which is just crazy. They also have the Bastel Bestie mixer, which is a portable analog mixer, which I use for my local synth meetups. Or why not pick up some synth stands by Synthrise? And I've met the guys behind the store, and it's a store by true synth nerds for us synth nerds. So use my link in the description of the video and check out Unz Unz. You support my channel and small indie manufacturers. So let's have a little sip of the coffee and talk sound design on the LEVIASYNTH. To me, it's all about choosing your own adventure, because this is based on algorithms, and while algorithms make you think of FM synths, this can go far beyond just FM sounds. So here's just a first little example of something I did. This is a pretty standard virtual analog sound with 3 oscillators and no modulators. But what happens if we introduce modulators? Here I've set one of the oscillators to a phase distortion mode. I pitched it up 7 semitones and 17 cents, and here's the dry sound, just one oscillator without any modulation. So let's increase the level of oscillator 4 and bring in that phase distortion. We can go a bit crazy just to hear the effect. And we can go further. We can take oscillator 7 and try and use that to modulate oscillator 4. We get these kind of fluttery metallic sounds going on there. And if we go back to the algo, you can see the oscillator 5 here we'll modulate oscillator 2. And with oscillator 5 being pitched up 9 semitones, we start to get into more dissonant territory. And I'm also using LFO number 4 here, set to a pretty high rate to modulate the pitch of oscillator 5, which is then in turn modulating oscillator, if I'm not mistaken, oscillator 2. And as a reminder, this is where we started without any modulation. And here is with some effects and modulation. If the previous part of this video was nerdy, it's gonna get even nerdier, because I wanna really get into what is algorithmic synthesis. So we're starting out with an initialized preset. We're gonna use algorithm 32. In this algorithm, oscillators 1, 2, and 3 are modulated by 6, 7, and 8. But 7 and 8 are also modulating 4 and 5. So let's start here with oscillator 1. Let's find a waveform we like. So let's go to Algo. We see that number 6 here is a modulator. We have the option for phase mod. This is basically what you have in a DX7, for example, where frequency mod, modulating the frequency, using the frequency of this oscillator. We have pulse width, we have HE sync, which is basically a form of soft sync, and then we have different form of phase distortions. And the way to think about phase distortions is that they kind of try and force the target waveform to become another waveform. So square forces it to become a square. I think we can see this. So if I just increase the envelope level here, and the phase distortion saw takes the kind of rounder qualities of the waveform and it makes it more saw-like. And then we have this pulse thing, which if you turn the envelope level up and down, which you could modulate, you can get this kind of pulse width effect. This is kind of nice, actually. And we can compare that to the actual pulse width mod. You hear how much more noticeable it is. Since I like the PD pulse, I'm actually going to modulate it. And we're using the oscillator's own envelope. So press once more here, and we have an envelope for the oscillator. Now you could have it just trigger once per key press, but you can also cycle it. It's over here, envelope loop, and we do infinite. And now it acts basically like an LFO. So we're already getting some movement to the sound with just one oscillator and one modulator modulating that oscillator, and we're nowhere near an FM style sound. We're not frequency modulating anything here. We're changing the waveform, not the frequency of the waveform. Another really important thing is that we actually have 2 level controls here, initial level and envelope level. And this is something I kind of messed up in my previous patch because I used initial level too much. And if you increase initial level, you're basically using the envelope here that is tied to the VCA. And if you instead use the envelope level here, you are using the envelope that is in the oscillator. And very importantly, this envelope can be assigned to other things than level. So if I press the oscillator button, you can see that these are kind of grayed out. It means that you can set the envelope, the internal envelope of the oscillator, to affect these parameters. So you can have it affect something other than just the level. The envelopes for the oscillators also have options for changing the curve, as you can see here, of the envelope. So exponential, linear, logarithmic. You can also quantize it to get these kind of clear steps in the sound. Which can be desirable in some situations. We might use it later for this patch. Now let's move on. We have oscillator 1, it's making a sound. We have oscillator 2, let's, I don't know, do a sub. So we pitch it down 12 semitones. Let's go to envelope 3. Let's change up the envelope for the VCA to make a pad sound, because I always make pad sounds when I'm showing off a synth, but with this synth in particular, it does make a lot of sense, and I'll show you why, because a lot of the modulations here has to do with time. Time is very important. And let's go to voice, and we turn on stereo, and it's set to carrier only, but we're gonna do both. So already we're getting somewhere. We can tweak the filter a bit. So if we go here to analog filter, you get a representation of what's going on. And we can use envelope 2 to control the filter. So I don't know, let's make a shape here, and we turn this knob here. And if we go to analog filter, you can actually increase poly aftertouch. So basically this should open up the filter more when I press it harder. So you hear the envelope response. And then I press it harder, it opens up more. Adding some dynamics. The idea here is not to make a pretty sound. I just kind of want to go over what you can do. There are so many things going on here. We can also introduce the digital filter here if we want to. Let's try a high pass, and we can just boost the lows a bit. And we can drive the signal even a little bit more digitally. And before I forget, we set the oscillator stereo here to on and panning to both. This means that the panning applies not just to the carriers, the oscillators that make a sound, but also the modulators. So what we can do is set up an LFO here, LFO 4, just hold it down, press oscillator 6, to panning. So you have panning over here, and amount, and it's a pretty fast LFO, and you should be able to hear how the modulation is moving in the stereo space. And a trick I learned from one of the people behind this synth is that if we take, say, the LFO here, and we press oscillator 1 here, and we select panning again, we can pan the oscillator as well, but oppositely. So I'm gonna take LFO 4, and we're gonna change it a bit here, slow it down a bit. We can also go to the second page here, smoothing it out a bit more. And if we look here at the algo, we can use oscillator 7 here to modulate oscillator 6, which is modulating all the others. So what I'm gonna do is oscillator 7 here, we are gonna first and foremost set up a pretty long attack, bit of decay, sustain to make it come in later. And then we go back here to the first page. There are shortcuts for moving between this faster. I just haven't learned all of them. Increase envelope level. Ooh, nice. So what I've set up here is I have held down oscillator 7, and I've assigned the envelope here, the internal envelope, to the pitch, and I'm also using envelope 5 here to control the level of oscillator 7. And in the envelope menus, there are 2 settings here, fast and slow gives you a really slow envelope. You hear how over in one of your ears, you should be able to hear the effect coming in. So let's tweak the envelope that is controlling the level of the modulator here, as well as the panning of that modulator. So you hear how things are kind of introduced over time, which I think is just lovely. So if we go back to the algo here, you can see we're using oscillator 1 here as a sound source, oscillator 2 as a sub, and then oscillator 3 we aren't even using. So we could add that in. And remember, if we go to the algo here, oscillator 3 is also modulated by 6, and 6 is in turn modulated by 7, and then we have 8. And we can use 8 to modulate not only the previous 2 modulators, but also 5. So maybe you could just introduce oscillator 5. So we have oscillator 5. And now if you use oscillator 8, because oscillator 8 will modulate not only the other modulators, but also 5. But I think I want to go with the sync here. So basically this will sync the pitch. So basically it means that you're syncing oscillator 8 and 5, but also affecting 7 and 6, which affects in turn 1, 2, and 3. Yeah, there is a lot going on here to keep in mind. And in the VCA menu here, basically you can set oscillator level and so on in order to rein in the sound, and this is what I've done. And also, I think we'll actually do a pre-effect compressor to keep everything tight. And why not use LFO3 here to also impact the pitch of oscillator 8? Because since it's synced, this will introduce some interesting effects as well. Here we get these kind of pitched warbles, but we could instead, if we don't like that, we could take an envelope instead to control the pitch and see if that sounds better or more interesting. I mean, there's so much going on. We can also start toying around with the oscillator group edit functions, because for example, we can quickly go here and change the mode of various of the oscillators to try and see what happens. We can change the waveform. That's it. Let's add in some pre-drive and just distort the hell out of it. I mean, there is such complexity to this synth, but it's also pretty straightforward, and you can have a lot of fun just kind of playing around with it. It's very open, I feel. I feel that this synth really lends itself to exploration, but it's also easy to end up in like pretty kind of distorted, kind of extreme sounding sounds. So I think taking it a little bit slow, introducing things one after another, seeing kind of how it affects the sound, scaling back when you need to, that is the way to operate with this synth. Let me end the video with a couple of thoughts here about the LEVIASYNTH. I have spent quite a lot of time with it, but I still feel I'm only scratching the surface of what is possible. But I know that two things are true at once. Firstly, that I've had more fun with the LEVIASYNTH than I've ever had with the HydraSynth, partly because of its sound with the analog filter that kind of rounds off the digital sound in a nice way, giving it more presence, a warmth, and also secondly because it's a much deeper and more interesting synthesizer, I think, in terms of synthesis. The algorithmic synthesis is very interesting, and I think a lot of people will be a little confused about it at first. And that brings me to my second personal truth about the LEVIASYNTH, and that is that it's not a synth for everyone. I don't think it will be as widely popular as the HydraSynth, and partly because of its algorithmic nature, the complexities that goes into it. It's really a sound designer's dream synth in many ways. You can do so much with it. I hope the sound demos at the start of the video showed that. It can do a wide range of sounds, but it is also super deep. But I also want to make it really clear that it's not a complicated synth to get started with, and you can make your synth adventure with it as complicated or as simple as you want it. You can use really complex algorithms, you can use simpler algorithms to start. So it's all up to you and kind of what adventure you choose. But with this being said, I want to leave you with this. We are just in January of 2026, and I think that we might already have seen the most important synth release of the year. That's my personal opinion. So thank you for being here watching. Thank you to Unsuns for sponsoring today's video. Go and check them out. They're linked below. A great store if you want to buy some cool synthesizers. And as always, hope to see you all in the next video.